Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Human SOS Show. We are glad to have you with us today, our weekly show. And this is, believe it or not, episode 68. So we've been at this a while, and we're glad to have a special guest with us, Wes Kremer. We'll learn more about him shortly. And we're going to be talking workforce. So, Anton, you want to open things up for us?
Yeah, just to start out, I'm going to introduce Wes, read his bio here. Excuse my, reading. I'm not the greatest reader. I tried to reach third grade level, but Wes has over 30 years of business experience, with 19 of those years being in his current role as Human Resource Director with the Children's Center for Developmental Enrichment, Oakstone Academy School. CCDE was started in 1999 as a private nonprofit 501c3 charter school with the state of Ohio, serving both typical and special needs students in an inclusive classroom setting. The special needs students primarily have autism spectrum disorder. CCDE is the umbrella organization of Oakstone Academy Schools, CCDE Therapies, and the sister organization of Oakstone Health Center. The school serves 675 students pre-kindergarten through 12th grades with 195 employees. As HRD with Oakstone Academy, workforce satisfaction and communicating and living out company culture are top priorities. With a unique population of students, direct instruction therapists, and support staff must all buy into the mission of serving students, families, and each other. To meet the demands of our students, top instructors and therapists must be recruited, retrained, trained, and remain motivated throughout their employment life cycles. Employee engagement, development, and succession management are all essential ingredients in the success of the organization. Wes attained his SHRM SCP certification in 2016 and a master's in human resource management in 2020. Wes will also be heading back to school in the fall of 2021 to pursue a master's in ministry, concentrating in practical theology. Wes will celebrate 30 years of marriage this September with his lovely bride, Leah, and they have 2 adult children. When Wes isn't at Oakstone or busy with school, he enjoys upgrading his Jeeps and driving and hiking around the countryside. His secret goal is to hike the Appalachian Trail in 2025, celebrating his 60th birthday on the trail. So we'll send out a URL here so you guys can connect with Wes, but I think he's already tagged in the comments. So if you guys want to pull him up and connect with him, we'd love for you to do that. So today's show, guys, go ahead.
Couple of housekeeping notes. Remember to, when you log on, to let us know where you're joining from, and we want to hear your comments, and want to welcome Hawk. Hawk has become one of our regulars, so welcome aboard, Hawk. Good to see you, and welcome, Wes. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right, so let me get our slides up here, and Wes, I'm glad you're on the front page there. It's much better than it. All right, so here's our
dive into agenda. Perfect. Yeah, so we'll start as always. We'll talk about HR news of the week. We enjoy talking about relevant, articles that we see. SHRM is usually where I pull them from. I'm also a member there, and I'm taking my SHRM exam December 1st, Wes. We're going to talk about, are we experiencing a turnover tsunami? We'll discuss how his organization builds a successful workforce, how they focus on a level 5 leader characteristics. They implement state interviews, which I'm really curious about personally, and then just discuss some future challenges around the workforce. Let's get into the article.
Welcome, Jeff from Chicago. Glad to have you. Be sure and chime in at any point with any questions, comments. All right, here we go.
Yeah, so big shout out to Kathy for writing this article. I always share the direct link to give credit, so you folks can copy the link and go there. Obviously, you have to type it in manually because you can't copy it off the screen. But if you do want to read more about it, so it's talking about Viewpoint and remote work depends on gender, ethnicity, and industry. And that's something that is a hot conversation, across all sorts of business right now. I've gotten into many conversations on LinkedIn with people, and really not trying to argue, but trying to understand the points and really figuring out what everybody believes and why they believe it. But some interesting facts, and this is asking managers, and 55% of supervisors find it difficult to manage a remote team. 42% said that sometimes forget about remote employees when assigning tasks, and 67% admitted they consider remote workers more easily replaceable than those working out on site. All three of you guys, guys and ladies, I should say, what are your thoughts on these 3 points just to start?
Real quick, Anton, welcome, Jake Ashan. Glad to have you.
I think what sticks out to me is the 67% admitted they consider remote workers easily replaceable. I think that goes to the fact of out of sight, out of mind, and both for on the negative side where they feel that they're replaceable, and or you have good the top performers. How easily is it to have the task in front of you that all you're considering, that's all you're looking at, versus continuing to nurture and do the things that you would do if those people were in your office?
Yeah, what thought comes to my mind is, we observe on social media the concept that people will say things on social media, behave on social media because they feel like they're behind a curtain somewhere. And I wonder if the same mentality comes into play with remote workers if the correct balance is not kept and it's all virtual, And so, yeah, it's kind of scary to think about, isn't it?
For me, what I find strange is the first one, 55% of supervisors find it difficult to manage a remote team. I would be curious to know which supervisors from which companies they surveyed, because in this global world, we are more and more working with people remotely. So definitely it's not easy, but 55%, so that's more of the majority. So that means there is definitely a challenge here, and that would mean as well to me that companies are either not training or coaching their supervisors the right way to help them cope with this challenge, or that they themselves are struggling as well. So I find this percentage quite high. And the second one, 42%, who sometimes forget about their remote employees, is also a sad number to see, unfortunately.
Well,
definitely.
I have to throw in a plug here. If you need help with this area, that's something we can work with you as a team. So feel free to reach out, and we can more than happy to help you learn to work within a remote environment.
Yeah, V's been doing this well before we started really talking about this kind of stuff. This was part of what she's done for many, many years, and she knows how to lead a global team. But in a way, we've all become global teams. Even if you're in the same city now, you might as well be scattered across the country because it's the same principles apply. But to me, guys, the reason I want to start out with this is because there's I got into this conversation and it was talking about introverts, extroverts, and who it's easier on, who it's better for. And I'm like, just whenever we're looking at things, can we just go beyond the surface level? I want team members to understand these risks. Be careful what we're asking for. Is the company going to provide the training necessary to fix these issues, or are these issues going to continue to happen while the workforce is trying to go remote, and they're not thinking about this? They're not thinking about how they're going to be forgotten. They're not going to be thinking about how their opportunities for promotion obviously are going to be hindered by this, and many other side effects that can come from it. I'm not against remote work. I'm against managers feeling like this and thinking like this and not getting the training that they need. Let's get into some stats. Hit the next slide.
Just a quick comment from Hawk. He says that he's been working 14 years with children on the autism spectrum, and he's looking forward to learning from you, Wes. So no pressure, but you're on cue here.
All right.
Let's see. Let's share a comment by Jeff. It says, I believe that an effective way of determining the value and irreplaceability of remote workers would be creating performance-based compensation. We talk about good performance-based KPIs, or whatever you want to call it, is going to be a part of having to work with a remote workforce without a doubt. So, all right, so moving on.
That's an interesting point on compensation and performance-based stuff. It's I have same conversation with introverts and extroverts. I had this long discussion on somebody's post. It was probably like 20 comments deep, with each one being a book. And we were trying to figure out how to solve some of these issues. And I said, let's extend the trust, not make people earn work from home performance, because some people will struggle because they're not working from home. They're stressed out. There's other things going on. Give them the ability to do that, but also give others the ability to not do that. You have to address it from both ends. But the one thing is, it's not just individualized performance. We have to look at the team performance overall, and that has to be baked into this performance incentive.
Mm-hmm.
If the individual is performing well, but for some reason team dynamics have broke down, that's a big deal, guys. The buzzword synergy, the team's supposed to be greater than the sum of its individual parts. Well, if that's not happening, then we may need to shift things, or also individual team members that are working from home need to take greater care and more concern around overall team performance to maintain that freedom, to maintain that desire that they have.
Yeah, and so I would add, you need to also have an open communication in place to be able to get feedback from your remote employees or whoever is in your team, and also so that they have the feeling as well, they can contact you as well if they feel challenged or they're struggling with something. So and that is also part of the performance, is that they need to know that they can reach out and that they can get the support they need when they need it.
Welcome, Kaylin. Apparently you've got a groupie here, Wes, so welcome to Kaylin. Glad to have you with us. Be sure and offer comments and thoughts as we go along. So go ahead, Anton.
Yeah, I mean, just look at the numbers here. We're looking at remote work affects men's and women's careers differently. I hope you guys can see that on the screen, and it's not too small. But we're looking at 26% of women and 29% of men. They end up working longer hours. So men tend to be work a little bit more, but all of them work longer hours. They expect to have fewer networking opportunities. Once again, men slightly higher than women. Their work performance has improved though. So women have actually a better work performance improvement than men, and their productivity increased. Once again, for women, a little bit better than men. And remote work allows them to stay in the workforce. Makes a lot more sense for me to women than it does for men, but I think the world is shifting. Parents, are definitely staying home a lot more with their kids, and ultimately they think they will not have the opportunity to form strong work relationships, and that's one of the smallest ones, because I think, like to V's point, we've gotten a little bit better with remote stuff, and this last year has introduced people to Zoom and team meetings and webinars, whatever it is. But Wes, I'll open it up to you. What do you see from these stats? What stands out to you, man?
Well, I think looking at just the time off worked, putting up those, first of all, going back to Virginia, the thing about, I think leadership has to be even more key now to make sure that everybody is engaged, to recognize both performance and maybe personal struggles. Working those longer hours, people can't just walk away from work now. It's not just getting out of the office physically. You might not be able to get out of your home. And so how to put those guardrails up so that, hey, everybody can work their different hours, but just to emphasize, hey, take time off for you too. So I think I just see those as challenging times. Those were difficult for us when we went virtual for a while. The teachers were teaching both their classroom instruction. This was spring of 2020, and then they would have lesson plans and different tutoring sessions and things like that at night to help out the parents. And so that was one of the challenges. And then when we did come back to in-person instruction, some of the parents expecting that to continue, and it's like, now we can't continue to have our people working 15 hours a day when they need to be refreshed for the majority of kids. So I think this is where leadership it becomes even more important as we become remote, and it doesn't look like maybe it's going to change for a while.
Welcome to Ricky and Misushi, a couple of our regulars also. And then Jikashan has a comment. Let's see, dovetails right into what Wes was saying. It's a part of leadership. Leadership should take initiative and get the issue resolved of remote team members. That's his thought anyway. I think we agree that it falls back on the leadership, and it is a different skill or an additional skill set required to work with remote workers and all. And virtual. It really is different and needs additional skill sets.
So just one thing to add, and I like the point on working longer hours. We deal with stress, right? This is the biggest thing that human SOS we work on, the Prospective works on. And it's not a good thing that people are working longer hours. But when I was a manager, I'd kick people out and say, go home. You need to go rest. Who's kicking those people out off their computers and saying to go do that? What controls are in place to make sure that the burnout is not going to be on the rise? We think that, oh, okay, it's easier, it's less stressful, but not necessarily. To some people, it may be more stressful, and they're putting in those hours. Yeah, maybe they have less distractions, but in a way, it can still be just as much stress with longer hours, and we can hit burnout even harder.
Welcome, Ashfaq, one of our regulars here from Pakistan. Good to have you, Ashfaq. Thanks.
Remote work differences among women in industries and specifically ethnicity. So you guys looking at those numbers, I'm not going to read through them all. We can see them. Anything that stands out to each one of you that you want to jump on?
One of the things I hear most about remote working, and I've even experienced it with a company, that the contention is that when people work from home, productivity is down. And I know that might be in isolated cases, but what I see of it, people, especially people that are in the right place, doing the right things, the other problem is probably more a concern that we're going to be over-indexing the other way, just a thought. And these stats seem to indicate that productivity is not an issue with work from home.
True.
And and you guys are more into the studies and things, but because I see it as a dichotomy, you have people that want to work remotely, and you hear working remotely is the way, even when we go back to life as normal. But then you hear the mental health issues and all the negative side, and so it becomes what is really happening. And again, that's where each organization is a little different. Who's your customer? To understand what, I don't know, because I just find that it's open ended, and I just find this kind of crazy that you can have such polar things, but I guess we're in a polar society at times.
Well, the thing I think we're going to see happen, and as we talk further about the tsunami and the workforce, I'll hit on this more, but work from home is going to force us to address the one-size-fits-all approach to employees. Because it shouldn't be happening anyway, but now it's going to be forced because of the difference in how people react to this and what they desire. And one of the things that even the people that want to work from home, Wes, I agree with you that got to be careful because of mental emotional well-being from isolation, even for introverts. And so a lot of consideration. We have a couple of comments from our audience. Kaylin says that she agrees with you, Wes. It was difficult to establish boundaries going from virtual to hybrid learning. Leadership support in that is so important. Yeah. And then Ricky comments, awareness of evolving due to climate change impacts our environment. So a lot of different changing elements going on around us. Good comments. Thanks.
Hey, it's Ricky Hardy. Ricky, I always appreciate the shout outs, man. Thank you for the shout outs. But one thing that we have to, I was listening to this training for HR, and it was presented in a really interesting way. We have to reconfigure our office space. We have to change how we approach office space. Instead of thinking about our head count on how many we can fit in the building, we need to start thinking of office space in terms of its function. How is it going to serve our community? What is it going to do for our workers? And really redesigning all that if we're going to be effective with this. The other point that made me think about this, we talk a lot about discomfort as growth. But at the same time, we're really trying to run away from discomfort right now and fully trying to find comfort and appease everything and make everything. And I'm like, don't over-index. Don't go too far to one end. We got to find that balance.
Yeah, Hawk makes a comment. He says he's worked remotely since 2018 and personally working long hours is a way of life. Focus in a time of interruptions is sometimes a challenge. So yeah, the work from home is no panacea either. It's got its challenges depending on your situation. Yeah. All right, moving along.
this is specifically focusing on networking opportunities and productivity. We've kind of talked about all this, but you can see how different ethnicities respond to it. Maybe you have an idea on it. We'll breeze through this one because I want to get to Wes's points more than necessarily spend all our time on this, unless somebody wants to throw something in there real quick.
Bottom line is a lot to be considered around the work from home question, and it's not going to be a one size formula that's going to fix it.
So let's talk about, are we experiencing a tsunami turnover or turnover tsunami? So Wes, and I know you cited the articles and, you pulled this out, but I'm sure this is a lot of your personal experience and personal feelings. That's why you chose to bring these points forward. So talk to me about, some of these points that we see on the screen.
Yeah, so I come from the perspective, we are a nonprofit school. We have a unique learning model in that we have both typical and special needs students in our classrooms. We have smaller class sizes, and the special needs side, half the kids have autism. So again, not having to report to shareholders or kind of looking at, we're never going to be the highest pay structure to compete with public school districts, things like that. That's where it becomes even more important for our leadership team, our administrative team, to be in contact with our employees and show empathy and to show understanding and to kind of have those key leaders in place that can say, hey, this person's struggling, or even those key leaders that have that open door policy where it says, hey, I'm struggling, and that's okay, so that we can give that support. But again, when we were looking at both in the spring of 2020, when we went virtual, and then even this past school year, we were, for the most part, 100% in person, except for a few virtual learners. So we were by far the anomaly, and we were the exception with the in person. But people working long hours, lesson accommodations, virtual learners trying to understand the technology when they're teaching a class in front of them, while also kids are listening in, and having the Google Meets going on and trying to keep everyone engaged. That was a challenge. And then just even getting into focusing on the work-life balance. And during the school year, after Thanksgiving, and even after the winter break, for those of us in the States, we try to give some extra time off, just both for health reasons and for, hey, here's some extra time just for you guys to please enjoy, rejuvenate the batteries. Because we kind of limped into that second semester. We were kind of limping into finishing that up. And then even after spring break, we gave an extra day just in the middle of the school year to say, hey, thank you for everything, because I know you're working a ton. And so that's how we tried to be on top of that. And then again, pay and compensation, that gets people in the door. But what opportunities are there for leadership, for both in the school or outside? Or there are different interests that we can support with. And then with us, it was the kids did not have to wear masks if they did not want to. And even if they did, there was no mass shaming on either way. That's become a very polarizing issue. Vaccination versus non-vaccination, very polarizing. We did offer it. We did work with local health officials in the area as a school, to get our staff vaccinated for those who wanted it. But me as HR, I don't know who's vaccinated and not vaccinated. I care and I don't care. All I care about is, once you're here, we'll do what cleaning and different things we can do with whatever health is going on. We always tried to keep things clean during the cold and flu season of wintertime. So these polarizing things, we try to be both in our classroom, be inclusive, but also inclusive in our work environment also. So that's kind of the 30,000 foot view of our organization and where I'm coming from. Thank goodness I did not ever have to work from home. My wife would have probably killed me, but it worked, and I was able to do it. Not everyone is in that boat, but I think that the keys are, you got to keep that communication open, and even more so, both, top management, C-suite level, things like that. It's not just an assignment now. I think early on there was an opportunity for, you heard all this great productivity from working from home. Well, everybody had kind of worked together. Everybody knew their role. Everybody knew what step they were supposed to be in the dance. Once you have new people come on board, what is the company culture? Are they going to lose some of that company culture? We could be a year out and nobody's really met in person with some organizations. Everything is through a screen. And I think that's the next challenge, is how do we maintain that company culture that we want? And does our previous company culture meet today's needs? And it's reevaluating what was our company culture, and is that still it? Where we've been able to maintain that with our school because we are in person, but still we did have those virtual learners. And how do we keep those virtual learners engaged and then keep the staff enthused, so that they can maintain that enthusiasm for their end product, which is the students.
Question brought by one of our participants, Wes. What is your experience of working virtually with kids on the ASD spectrum?
It is a huge challenge, because kids on the spectrum, they don't want to deal with the public anyway at times. They want to keep their internal focus. And that was some of our biggest challenges. Both parents and the students, some of our biggest successes is when we were able to get back into school. When we were able to run our therapies the summer after we were off virtual. ASD kids, their natural tendency is to put the blinders on, to look straight ahead. If I don't have to make eye contact, I don't have to. And to do therapies virtually, it is a challenge. And it becomes, I think, as a parent or someone who is experiencing that and supporting that student with ASD, it becomes even more important to advocate for their student, to if it's the services, if it's asking questions, whatever it might be. Unfortunately, I think it's even more difficult, and it's even more important for the advocacy for that student.
Wes, I have a question. The comment of a turnover tsunami. What are you looking at in that regard, and with that comment?
With that, the article was basically, we were averaging, I don't know, something along the lines of like 3.5 million jobs where people were leaving every month. And then it went down to 1.5 because health reasons, safety, things just, tightened down as far as the turnover. Now the thought being, well, we're going to open things back up. And you have all these people that are ready to make the move geographically, the whole 9 yards there. And it becomes, is the dam getting ready to break? Well, the thing that's unknown for us right now is, are we going to be going back to shutdown? Are things going to be locked down? So are we going to have that tsunami? But again, that's where it's even more important to during the year and during your interactions with your team is we started implementing stay interviews. Initially, we stopped doing reviews with people that had over 5 years, because the thought being, hey, they've been here 5 years, they're good, they'll come to us if they need anything. And that's a broad assumption. And everything that you see from millennials is they're going to be the top amount of workforce as far as number of workers by 2025. Millennials like that interaction. They want feedback, and to take our administrators that are baby boomers and Gen X, to get them to understand it's not just put your head down and work. It's those stay interviews, open lines of communication, and it's not a formal review. It is it's some open-ended questions that are very consistent throughout the organization. And it's allowing that person, how do you, where do you see yourself in the organization? How do you feel things are? Again, if it gets into money, things like that, hey, we're always looking at that as a nonprofit. These are our constraints, but it just opens up those lines of communication, especially Anton mentions the extroverts versus introverts. And it's like, I've come to I'm more of an extrovert, which it's good on the sense of talking, but then it's also bad in the sense of open mouth, insert foot at times. Where that introvert, what I've come to appreciate with that introvert, it's when they do have something to say, listen. They've thought about it. It's not just something that it's spewing out. Where I talk, maybe it's 50% let it go, or 50% is really important. Where that introvert, it becomes, what do they have to say? Even if it's in meetings, if it's hey, I haven't talked to you in a while. What are your thoughts? Where are you going? So those state interviews have become very important in keeping that communication open and welcoming that open communication. And I think on the leadership side and the administrative side, it has to be, hey, people are going to say stuff, that you're not going to like. And, what part can we change? What part doesn't fit our culture? And, I'm sorry, I can't help you. But where can we get better? And it's having that open mindset and that growth mindset to be open to that change and to listen to your staff when you do have the stay interview. So it's not just them going, oh, they don't care or listen anyway. So what's the point of doing these conversations?
Welcome, Mazart. Go ahead, V. Just wanted to give a shout out to a new participant.
No problem. Thank you. Yeah, I have two comments on this slide. The first one is I want to congratulate you, Wes, for staying open-minded about the mask or the vaccination. I've always been a strong advocate of diversity and inclusion, and to see all these divisions that are being made at the moment about the mask and the vaccination, it really breaks my heart. So I'm glad there are still people like you who leave the freedom and give the choice to people. I think that's why it should be everywhere, but unfortunately it's not. So I wanted to give you the shout out. The second thing on the first part, the reasons for wanting to move to another position, I am surprised not to see something that we used to see in the past. In the past, people were moving position to get more growth opportunities. And it looks like it's not now a priority anymore. So I just wanted to mention that. Maybe we are again in a changing situation, and maybe priorities have changed. But I thought it was strange not to see that on the list on the first main reason to move positions. So that was just a comment from my side.
Go ahead, Anton. You got something?
Priorities shifted, right? I mean, when you face danger, when you face things that challenge your life overall, growth kind of thing goes on the back burner a little bit, and people start thinking survival before growth, right? I got to get through this first before I move into my next phase of life. And it's really interesting to me to hear the turnover tsunami. I think that's where communication with your team becomes extremely important. That's where senior managers need to be educating, frontline managers on how to communicate with their teams, how to identify flight risks, how to intervene and pull them back into the company if they're a valuable employee. That was something that was every single one-on-one I've ever done, either with my senior management or my management, my lower management teams, has always been talking about flight risks. What's going on? Why might they leave? And of course, we're not trying to keep everybody. Some people will leave for good reasons. I just don't want people leaving for bad reasons, right? And we need to be communicating to identify that.
Well, one of the things, your comment about a turnover tsunami, when I think tsunami, I think major event. And I do a lot of workforce presentation, study, research. And one of my concerns is that how we handle this question of work for home is going to be a big determinant in whether we go from, our workforce is already on the edge of having real problems, that depending on how we handle this, it could throw us into a full-blown workforce crisis, because this is a third major factor, one being education, the other being leadership and the leadership and generations in the workforce. And I just I'm watching with a little bit of concern. I'm not a henny penny kind of person, but I think we've got a lot to consider as we look at work from home and its effects, and how both the consequences and the unintended consequences have to be considered. Kaylin has another comment. It was survival mode during virtual learning for teachers, at least, rather than looking for growth opportunities. I think more people are open-minded to growth now that we have some experience as to what remote work is like.
So, yeah, no, that's a good point for me, and maybe it's because I sometimes think differently. To me, growth opportunities, that may mean that also I will survive better if I have a chance to work somewhere else in another company that, for instance, doesn't force me to wear a mask, and then I can get maybe a higher position. Then I'm killing two birds with one stone. So that was my thought with the growth opportunity. But I agree, the priorities in stress situations are very different, and growth is not the first thing you may think of.
Let's get into the next slide.
One quick comment. Everybody take a bow. We appreciate Ricky, and he throws out some appreciation to us. Thanks, Ricky. We appreciate you as well.
I can feel your positivity from this screen, Ricky.
Oh, man.
So how do we build a success? How we, not we, but your company builds a successful workforce? Talk to me about some of these points.
Again, I think I touched upon them a little bit earlier, but with our organization, and we lost some people. It was for this past school year, we were going to return to in-school instruction, in-person instruction. We weren't going to deviate from that. Our kids needed it, both typical and special needs. And that is our end product. If we aren't educating our students to the best of our ability, we don't have a school. And so it was communicating that to our staff. And again, we lost some people because of that, because health-wise, whatever. And it was just like, okay, totally understand. We'll do whatever I can to help you get to your next position. But obviously we're not the place for you. And so that is our culture. But again, going back to, we hire for those hard skills at times. And I think we're starting to do a little bit better with trying to look for those soft skills, because the bottom line is at times, most of the time you hire for those hard skills, your previous experience, your education, your certification, but then people are let go because of the culture. They're not a good fit. They didn't do this or that because they don't agree with the organization, and it becomes those soft skills that are the challenge. And I think throughout the recruiting process, throughout the interviewing process, if someone is hired, this is what we believe in. And if you're not on board, this probably isn't the place for you. You might have all those talents in the world, but it has to be a good fit, just like a marriage, any sort of relationship. And this is a relationship that you usually spend more time in than you do personally. So it becomes, what are the key aspects that you look for in your organization that make that successful employee? And with us, we do team teaching because of the population of kids. We're about a 1-to-6 ratio in our classroom. So team teaching is huge. That person that thinks that they're going to be the end all be all of educators, and I can do it myself, they will not be successful here. And that's a part of our interview now, is what are your feelings on a team environment? This is what we have. How do you feel that you will be successful? What challenges do you see in this? And a good question on the other side is, well, if I'm the lead teacher or I'm teaching this subject, are other people going to say things? And it's like, okay, but how does that classroom meld together with each of your skills? But it's being communicative on the front end. And so as far as that workforce, again, that communication and using more channels of communication than just that, than hitting a send button. Again, proper communication is that the receiver receives the message as intended by the communicator. And I think we lose that as intended. Because we hit send, that doesn't mean that the email was communicated. We don't understand. Translation gets lost in our tone of voice through email. How many times texting do we misunderstand? because are we proofreading our texts before we send them? Has there been a spelling correction and a word isn't meant? We see all the funny things, but some devastating things can be done too. So again, is it virtual? Is it email? Is it a phone conversation? Again, people were burnt out on virtual meetings this year too, because it was let's have a meeting because it's just a Zoom thing. And again, putting up those guardrails too. Hey, it's Wednesday free meetings. Get your work done. You were not going to. If you want to hear, you can reach out, but there's going to be nothing tasked of you today other than please just get your work done. And so it becomes just those understandings of your workforce. And again, we're starting to see the beginning of the school year where we're having some folks that aren't going to be returning, and it is a huge surprise. And it's like, but then my first question is, can we talk about it? Was there a certain situation that might have happened? Is it money? Is it benefits? Are you moving? And just trying to figure out, can we do something better as an organization to be competitive with public school districts or other private schools? But we very rarely have people leave us to go to another private school. It's mostly a public school environment. And so again, I think we can hit the next slide, getting into those level 5 leaders.
Go ahead, Kev.
Well, one quick comment, Wes, I have to applaud you guys. Based on this slide, it appears that you guys stuck to your vision, mission, and values regardless of what went on. And I have to think that really provided a great anchor.
Oh, thank you,
folks. So that's really great.
So with us, it's a little bit out of date in looking at the companies, but the theory of the good to great, looking at level 5 leaders by Jim Collins, he's his Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. It's like we all know how that went down. But but the positive things are looking for those folks that are ambitious, that have a fantastic work ethic, but it's not all about them, and they're about the larger organization. And again, I think that can be, going back to those introvert workers and things, I think it's something like now 45% of CEOs are now considered introvert, where previously you thought of a CEO as that extrovert, hey, we're going to sell the company, things like that. But through this book, and even looking at like a Warren Buffett or someone along those lines, it's those quiet leaders that are humble, that when they do, they're not out there all the time, but when they do say something, it's like, oh, I better listen to that. So we look for those level 5 leaders and recognizing who's come in, because at every sort of position you can see who's a good culture fit, who's doing their job. And it's recognizing those folks, especially for future succession management with our organization. The people that founded the organization, they're getting into their late 50s and early 60s now, and Mother Nature's undefeated. So it's looking for who's going to take that baton. And I think the biggest challenge with us is, and what hurts the most, is when those level 5 either leaders or candidates leave our organization. And then it becomes, did we not recognize them enough in stay interviews? Was it a surprise? We can't help it if somebody gets married or wants to move somewhere or has family issues and needs to leave like that. But what products are in our realm that we can control, so that we can maintain that level 5 leadership? Because there's always going to be turnover. It's just that some turnover is going to hurt worse than others.
And I'd like to throw out a question to you, Wes, based on the prior slide and this one as well. There's a body of study out there that seem to indicate, stumbled over my own tongue, seems to indicate that a better predictor of people's success in the workforce, rather than being their school, their experience, their talent, those things, is rather their behaviors. There is an organization that's done some studies on it and have approached it from a behavior standpoint. Do you think that is something that we really should be considering more of, is looking at people's behaviors and determining whether they're a fit for a job or not?
I definitely think it should be more of a consideration, but even now within that, what are your behaviors at work? What are your behaviors at home? So I think even with that, it's gonna be a change because of how fluid everything is. But I definitely, what I've tried to get across to our administrative team, some of the worst employees we've had the highest degrees. And some of our highest PhDs came in and they wanted to be called doctor. Well, the person that founded this organization has a PhD and she introduces herself as Becky. I'm Becky. So it's like those couple things, those are small, but it kind of opens the door a little bit as to how they're going to interact with the team and how they're going to view hierarchy and things along those lines. I think it was Simon Sinek that talks about that, really stresses those servant leaders. And leadership, the value of leadership is I have your back. Bad things can happen, good things can happen. It's those leaders that when good things happen, they put others out first. And was the team successful? When bad things happen, how did I allow this to happen? And what can I do to fix this? And so I think that within that leadership, it's seeing how do people react both in challenging and negative situations. When we have a new hire, even the new hires, even during parent-teacher conferences, or even when we have the kids are only here till 1:30 on Friday, so it gives us a lot of time to have those meetings and to allow people to get their work done, things like that for the upcoming week. But a lot of those things is, how are things going in your classroom? And more times than not, when we have that person that says, well, I didn't do this, or I did this, but then it becomes, if it becomes negative, well, that person didn't do something. It's like, okay, what part of this do you own? And some of those meetings can become kind of telling too, as to how you are, because adversity shows everything. That is truly, that truly, unravels the onion.
I have to jump in here. Okay, go.
Got a comment from one of our participants. Jeff says, based on remote learning requirements, it'd be helpful to teach parents how their role in their children's educational development will need to change. A how to homeschool or how to assist course would be helpful.
Sign me up. Sign me up. I'll be the first sign up with that one. I have 3 of them, and for sure, like there's a gap, and parents we're supposed to just pick it up and run with it, and we're lost. And then my sister, on the other hand, she's a lot more experienced at that kind of stuff, and she just completely took her kid offline and said, we're going to do this ourselves because this is just awful. She was in Seattle, and initially she really didn't like what they were doing out there. But there's one that I got to jump in on. I have a personal experience with, and what you speak to is hitting so close to home. I lately considered, Kevin's an educator, I lately considered following his path and looked into becoming a high school business teacher. It was for a vocational school for, high school students learning college level courses. And I went to the interview, and it was a panel interview with the principal and their lead teacher. And the entire time I felt that lead teacher just judged me, made me feel less. He had a PhD, and it's all they focused on is a lesson plan and how to deliver a lesson plan. And my focus was more on how do you get students to care? How do you engage with students? And this was a lot of poverty-stricken students. I'm like, how do you build hope, ambition? Lesson plan is table stakes to me. But I'm like, those things I think is what we should be doing. But the entire time I was just like, oh my God, I'm so wrong. And I was like, maybe I shouldn't be an educator. I actually wrote an email to that principal and said, hey, just 2 cents. I'm not going to take this job, but because I couldn't work with that person. But that's not a level 5 leader by any means.
No, yeah. And if a school or an organization can't feel your passion and things like that, then you did the correct thing, because that organization, that person, that department wasn't for you.
Yeah, as an educator, Anton, I understand completely, because having worked in the education world in the career vocational area, the view among rest of academia of our efforts was not real good, and and they did the same to me. Yeah, make your lesson plans, all that. But whether I engaged students or not, as long as the paperwork was in the right place, it was the key thing. Fortunately, I was able to, check the paperwork box, but I focused in on building into these young people as part of it. But you were definitely astute of what goes on quite often, unfortunately.
And what I try to tell the teachers that first day of school is reminding them, what is it? Divorce rate in the U.S. among like even Christians, it's 50%. Throw special needs into it, and divorce rate among special needs parents is about 80%. And what I try to get across to them is, guess what? You might be the best 45 minutes in their day. Make it every opportunity you have. If it's holding a door, if it's welcoming, if it's just recognizing, oh, they're down, or they're whatever it might be, their social cues, that body language. You have an opportunity to change lives, and as leaders, we have an opportunity to change lives. And I don't see a difference in either of them. And it's when you have that interaction, make it the best interaction, even if it's a challenging situation. Be honest, be upfront. This is how we got here. What is your role in this? You may think 95% wrong, but all right, take the 5% and fix it, and let's go from there. That's a step.
Yeah.
And it's so easy to the worker's wrong, the boss is an idiot, but how do we come together and meld each other, be that hand in glove?
Well, and I have to key in on something. A lot of teachers, and I won't go very far with this, but got to share, a lot of teachers need to understand that they do better to focus on being leaders than being teachers. Because if they'll be leaders, the teaching part will make itself known and become a part of it. But if you don't lead, you're going to have a difficult time teaching.
The student will remember you as the person over their lesson most of the time.
But isn't that the same across all business as well, where you have a lot of these high performers, which, we love working with tech companies. And I've seen it in sales, I've seen it in tech. You take these amazing performers and you move them into leadership roles, and they're trying to just create amazing task doers from their people. And it's the same principle. Instead of focusing on still maintaining your amazing performance and being the guy that knows or girl that knows everything, right? Be the person that supports everybody. Be the person that helps others to reach their level of potential, and focus on those soft skills and being that level 5 leader.
Couple of comments from our participants. Appreciate Ricky. V, you might appreciate this one. He particularly likes the red person in the circle on the slide. So he appreciates diversity. And then I appreciate that Hawk echoes what Jeff's comment was about the importance of parents' involvement. And as a former teacher, I can certainly echo that by all means. And then Hawk also comments that it all starts with connection. Yeah, if you don't have that connection with a young person, or most anybody, it's hard to teach them or influence them by all means.
Yeah.
We're ready to move on to the next slide?
Yeah, he already touched on this a little bit, but I just want to ask him if he has anything else to add on, the state interviews. I just thought that it was a really cool concept.
Yeah. So this was a book by Richard Finnegan, and I took part in a kind of a book club. We had a virtual book club with some of the HR folks around Central Ohio, and it really got into it's a conversation that it's not review. It's not, this is, going down, it's a very orchestrated conversation, so that from every department down, we're kind of asking the same questions, in the sense of it's open-ended, how's it going? What is happening? What do you see your role in this organization? And then if there's, with us, with this year, it might be how did the virtual, or how did this past year affect you and affect your position? But it's getting that, it's welcoming that interaction from from the employee that you want to hear how things are going, in the sense of that if there's training, is there growth opportunities? Virginia, when you're asking about the growth, I think that's where, as a private school, we're not going to have the highest pay. We're not going to have the best benefits. We just can't compete with that. But it's those growth opportunities. It's the culture. It's the family. It's that a single mom, it's supporting her and her kids by offering before and after care and employee discounts in education. So those stay interviews, they really, it's kind of one time per year that you really want that, but it's really kind of getting into on a conversation basis throughout the year. And then again, it's recognizing, hey, we recognize you as a leader. Would you be comfortable in this role? Some people want it to be. Some people have school coming up, or families they plan to start, or medical issues of their parents as our parents get older, but things like that. So you don't know what people have going on both inside and outside the work environment until you ask. And as they're heading out the door, that's too late to ask. So that's what the stay interviews kind of are for, because they've already made the decision, and there's very few times you can turn someone's opinion around as they're heading out the door and saying they're leaving.
And I really love that stay part, because I've done a ton of exit interviews in my life, trying to figure out what went wrong, how do I fix the culture, how do I fix the environment. But V, this question is actually for you. How do we get managers to communicate differently? How do we change our one-on-one structure or whatever it may be, and train these managers to execute these kind of stay interviews? Do you have anything to add to that?
So there are many things you can do from a communication point of view, but the first thing is, as I said, is first implement like a process, like saying every Monday, Wednesday, whenever that suits the manager, that he or she will have like one-on-ones interview, in one-on-one meetings with each of their team members. And then plan maybe once a month such a conversation. What do you still like your job? What would you like to do more? What are your biggest challenges? Really trying to understand or to have a feel whether this person wants to leave or not, or if he or she needs to be more challenged or needs more support, etc., etc. So I think having these points of contact, and that people know that, okay, they have an issue, but they know that tomorrow or next Monday they can talk to their manager. And if not, they should, and that's again what I said before with this open communication, they should know as well that if they really have an emergency or a situation that they're really struggling with, that they can reach out to their manager, and that the manager is not going to be angry because, oh, you reached out to me, but that was not planned. We were supposed to have our one-on-ones in 2 days or whatever. That the person feels safe, and that feels that, yes, he or she can contact the manager. And maybe the manager will be busy at that time. Maybe he will be in a meeting or whatever. But then the manager can say, well, listen, I'm in a meeting right now. I cannot talk to you, but let's talk in 1 hour, or give me half an hour and I'll contact you as soon as I'm out of the meeting. So that, again, the person feels recognized, feels heard, and then can really speak to that person. So that would be, I would say, that's the basis, to inform people that they have something regular. Yes, sometimes it will be cancelled because people are off, people are in other important meetings or whatever. And I'm not saying the ones that are not important, but again, if there is an urgent project that needs some attention, maybe the manager will have to cancel a one-on-one. But then if he says, well, I cannot do it at the time we had planned, but I can only do it later on this evening, or tomorrow morning, first thing I meet with you, then again, the person knows that he or she has not been forgotten, and he or she is important for the team. So I think by having all of that, by making clear that, yes, there is a regular communication happening, yes, the person can reach out to you, because it should be a two-way street as well. Often employees wait for the manager to contact them, but also an employee should also know that he or she can reach out to, and should also reach out to, if the manager doesn't have one-on-ones. An employee can say to his manager, hey, I've not talked to you for 3 weeks, a month, and there are a few things I'd like to discuss with you. When can we meet? And then again, by doing that, then the manager will not forget their remote team members, for instance, like we saw at the beginning. So as I said, there are many things you can do, but most important is really to establish this trust and this open open communication so that people feel that they can be heard and that they can raise their concern or get some feedback.
No, I love it. Wes, we're out of time. I just want to take the time to thank you. And honestly, this has been really great. I know the audience has gotten a lot of it, whether they watch this live or they watch it later on, recording, or, eventually I'll get to splitting these videos up, chopping them up and making them more digestible, because there's so much great content. Thank you so much, man.
No, thank you guys for having me. I really appreciate it. I hope some of significant on the parent side of things. I think it just becomes continue to be advocates for your kids, especially in this time of virtual learning, because we've had a couple of those, parent comments. But please reach out to me if I can be of any help with this subject or anything down the road. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, encourage y'all to connect with Wes. He's obviously got a lot of to offer, both training, perspective, experience, and one of my favorite words, some wisdom. So appreciate that. And join us next week. Hey, we're back every Tuesday, 11 a.m. Eastern, and love to have you guys interacting. Thanks for everyone that was here and comments, and hope you come back next week and really engage with us. And also check out our website and take our stress assessment. It's a free assessment you can take and be helpful to get some insight. Our ultimate goal is to help us manage stress well so that we are living and working well. Any other closing comments?
Just next week, we'll dive into communication within relationships, specifically talking on the life side of things. So V, of course, would love to have you back, because that's your strength amongst many. So yeah, folks, hopefully we'll see you next week, same time, same place.
All right. Take care. Have an amazing week, everyone. And we will see you again next week.